It is tricky to make this thing work, specifically because you have to branch out into many different stats with this kind of character that uses the quality scenario of the builds. That being said, I did manage to tweak around and to optimize this character as much as I had the opportunity to. At first I thought that it was a weak character, but in the end tweaking some spells, some usage of spells, how are we going to be using them on gameplay rather than on the mathematics of making them more powerful thanks to the stats, which is something that we are optimizing as well. But this guy just has everything. When it comes to distance, it has distance. The weapon that he uses to deal with trash, it's just amazing. Now the spells are the ones that are going to shine the most, because this guy can one-shot quite a lot of enemies. And when I mean quite a lot of enemies, I mean that it can one-shot the elite high health pool enemies that you are going to encounter. All of the gameplay footage that you are seeing in the background is from a late game area of the game, and as you can see, we are one-shotting most of the elite enemies that we have right here because of how we are using this one specific spell, although we'll get to that a little bit later on. First and foremost, like always, we're gonna talk about stats. Now this character, granted, it is going to be a little bit higher level than the rest of the characters that you would be using prior to a mono stat, for example. So a full radiance character, it should be lower level because of the soft caps and hard caps in Inferno, or a strength, agility, dexterity, depending on what kind of character are you building, is going to be less or more level. When it comes to quality, this is a good and a downside about this build. Before anything else, we have 50 Radiance and 50 Inferno. That is our main source of damage, because we are using Umbral magic. The Umbral magic scales with both Radiance and Inferno. That being said, we also need a weapon that is going to scale properly with Radiance and Inferno. We are using a weapon that's doing that thing. Now, the subcap happens at around 40 and 50. 40 and 50, that's when the subcap happens. So if you do not want to have that much level, ideally, if you not want to farm that much, once you reach the end game, you're going to be like 110, and having 40 and 40 on Radiance and Inferno, that should be more than enough. I did farm a little bit, I did stretch it out a little bit, so I'm having that 50 and 50 in Radiance and Inferno, so that's the thing. Vitality, we're going to have 40, so that is the soft cap of Vitality. If you want to level it a little bit more, 60 is the ideal sweet spot. As for Endurance, 20 is just more than enough to use the armor that we are using and to use the weapons that we are using. Now, one good thing about quality builds is that they are also quite amazing in New Game Plus. So if you want to take this guy all the way to New Game Plus, you are going to increase the damage of the weapon, of the main weapon, and the main catalyst of your spells that much more, because there is a hard cap for the stats, main damage stats, at 75. So you can raise Radiance to 75 and then Inferno to 75. Ideally, that is going to get you to a level 180, and that is going to increase your damage quite a lot, because since we have more stats that we can spread our points into, it's going to increase that much more damage. That said, that is if you're going to go on New Game Plus. Let's talk about how are we going to have this guy on the early stages of the game and mid-game stages of the game. For early, you're going to want to have 15 Vitality, 15 Endurance, and that's it. For the spells, 18 Radiance, 18 Inferno. That's where you're going to have early game. Mid game, 25 Radiance, 25 Inferno, 30 Vitality, and 20 Endurance. And then once you reach the late game, end game, this is how your stats are going to look like. Now let's talk about the weapons. And it's going to take quite a while for you to get the Melted Dark Crusader sword, although this is a weapon that if you want to carry your character all the way to the maximum level, it has V scaling in every single stat. So as you can see, it reaches an attack power, as we are right now, of 400. So for a one-handed weapon, 400 damage. That's actually quite amazing. It does has wither damage. A lot of people do not like wither damage because it's not really that ideal native damage that you deal on hits. You do have to wait a little bit to deal that extra damage. But one thing that I like about this is that, as you are seeing on the screen, wither damage, when you charge heavy attacks, you can do that final finisher attack regardless of the posture of the enemy. So that's actually quite nice. If you charge your heavies and you're using this to kill trash, you're always going to be able to do that thing, and that is so very satisfying. So that's actually quite appreciated. Now, when it comes to the spells, the main spells that we are going to be using, it's going to be Latimer's Javelin. You can get this fairly early in the game. In my opinion, this is one of the best spells that you have in the game. And then we are going to be using Umbral Weapon. Granted, if Umbral Weapon takes quite a while before you actually get it, so you can change that for Poison Weapon, which you can purchase with our friend Mohu right here. As soon as you find him, he's going to sell it. For the Umbral Weapon, you're going to have to progress a little bit. He is going to sell the Umbral Weapon as well, so you don't really have to worry about that. You just have to progress in the game, and eventually this guy is going to have the Umbral Weapon. Now, that said, you can be using the Poison Weapon. It's not that good. It doesn't deal as much damage because it has the status ailment, but that poisons the enemy. I don't like that because you want to be dealing immediate damage in this kind of games, in this type of games. It's always better. Granted, Poison Weapon does increases your elemental weapon base damage a little bit, but it's just a little bit, and you're not going to be using it that much. The one other thing that is going to be our main one-shotting is going to be Barrage of Echoes. At first, I thought that this thing was not as good as I think it is now, but the way you use this thing is kind of a shotgun. Now, this thing does that little barrage of little things that explode after a certain period of time. And it's not that good, because if you're facing the enemy, if you just shoot it just like that, it's not going to do anything because it's going to bypass the enemy, and it's going to take quite a while for it to explode. So at first I thought that it was one of the crappiest spells that you have in the Umbral. It takes quite a while for you to master and to learn how to use the spell, and how it works is that you point blank the enemy on the ground, so you do have to manage it a little bit, but those explosions, there's several explosions, and ideally they're going to be dealing 2k damage once you sum up all together. It's going to one-shot every single elite enemy that you encounter in the game, especially useful against bosses. And so you want to aim it at the ground, as I am showing you on footage right now, and you're ideally going to one-shot every single thing. It takes quite a while for you to manage how to get accustomed to the timing and the opportunity of attacks, because you can't see really the enemy that much, so you have to be very fast and you have to pinpoint it real fast. But once you manage, it's just so satisfying to watch it explode and the enemies go boom. As for the talisman that we are using the Faceless Carving, increase the wither damage and wither defense. My all-time favorite, Min Coward's Ring, and then the Ring of Night's Fire, which deals additional fire and wither damage. I'm going to be using our boy Fextra for this one, so I'm going to be leaving these locations on the video description so you can go check them out for yourself. But now let's talk about the runes that I have socketed on my weapon. I've tried several combinations. One thing that I do not like about the quality pills is that they cannot reach the damage potential that a mono stat would be dealing, because they could be using, let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, this is a build that I'm going to be having real soon for you, the Pyromancer one, the Roger Fire one. With this guy, you can just be slotting as many Inferno attribute scaling that reduces the Radiance attribute scaling, and this one, for this specific weapon, increases the damage by like 150 or 200, and you can have 3 of these guys. With this kind of builds, you cannot do that, because you have to be using the basic ones not to intervene with the other scaling of the weapon. So the best thing that I just could do, Trust me, I've tested it several times. This is the highest damage potential that you can do with this weapon. Increase the radiant scaling, inferno scaling. These ones are the basic ones. They do not increase the damage that much. But hey, the weapon is going to be serviceable to clean trash, and ideally you're going to be using your magic to kill the rest of the enemies. There's also this amazing gem that I have slotted right here that if you slot it in your shield, you gain a small amount of mana regeneration. All of these gems are actually quite random, and yeah, the enemies drop them, so you do have to be quite a little bit lucky about them. And not much more than that, really. You have kind of a holy trinity when it comes to how this character works. You have a melee very sufficient enough. It suffices for dealing damage to trash enemies, your main weapon. So you're going to be using your main weapon for trash enemies, and then once you encounter elite enemies, you're going to be using your shotgun, and when you're dealing with those range annoying enemies, you're going to be using your spear, which is actually quite nice because it deals kind of a small AoE, but the range in this thing, it's just amazing. And if you have your character set up like I am using my character right here, that thing is going to, the damage in that thing is going to be ranging between 10-1500, so that's actually quite amazing. The two spells that we are using right here, they barely cost any mana, so that's what it makes this character so deadly. Anyways, if you like the content, like and really super appreciated. No one's told you today that you're a gorgeous and beautiful person. You are indeed a gorgeous and beautiful, beautiful person. I will be seeing you goddamn gorgeous and beautiful people in the next one. A beautiful day, and goodbye.